hope and your promise.
I am yours, no longer my own.
So it's a new year. I don't know how many of you are like me that want to really do something different this year. I'm not going to ask you to make resolutions because we all say we don't make resolutions, but we do. Most people do want to do things better this year than last year, right? We don't want to do worse than last year for sure, right? We want to do a little better maybe, and maybe that means doing something a little different, right? I mean, I do. I don't know about you. My son goes to the gym. He said when he came back the first time in January, he's like, "Man, you wouldn't believe how many people were there." I'll be gone. I know I paid a gym membership for a whole year, and I went like 6 times. I was like, that was the stupidest thing in the world. I kept telling myself, oh yeah, you'll go back. No, I won't. No, I'm not. I do not like going to the gym. But anyway, change happens all the time. Change is unavoidable. If you're like me, the change that I want to bring about in my life this year is to get more done. Or to get more organized. Not to get more done. Not so that I can get more things accomplished. But actually, I want to get more organized so that I don't miss doing the things that are most important. Right? I don't want to miss the stuff that really counts. So I want to get more organized. So I'm not scrambling to get the things that I really care about. So that's why I'm doing it. Change is hard. It happens all the time, though. And it's hard at the same time. The change that we want to make, we have to make, depending on your perspective, is hard. I don't know if you're like me in that regard, but some changes are unwanted and necessary. For me, I need to be in the things that are most important. But I don't want to have to plan. I mean, when I make a list, I feel like my mom is bossing me around. You know, that's just the way I feel about lists. And so I avoid lists completely. If you know me, you know that I will not make a list. But I'm having to learn to make a list, even though it drives me crazy. I'm having to, because it helps. So there's unwanted and necessary change, right? But my purpose, why I'm here, drives me to make those changes. Other kinds of change that you may be dealing with. There's wanted and necessary change. It's wanted and it's necessary. These are the things that we get to. Like I need to, and finally I have a leg. Right? It's like, I get to do this. It's exciting. It's fun to do those kind of changes. Right? Like, I want to go to a new place. I'm hungry, and I want to try this new restaurant. That's a great kind of change that we want to do. Right? Then there's the wanted and not necessary. The things that we want, but it's just going to be kind of an experiment. It's going to be an adventure. It's not really necessary, but we're going to do something different anyway. Right? We're going to go to this new place, even though we can go anywhere we want. But we're going to go to this place that's new just to try it. Right? It's wanted, but it's not necessary. Let's go somewhere different. It'll be an adventure. Let's try this trail. Let's just go down this road, see where it goes. Right? Then there's the unwanted and the not necessary change. These are the ones that we don't like. The ones that somebody tells you got to change. Right? If you're like me, those are the ones you dread, right? Like, you got to do that different. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Yes, you have to do it different. Why? Just because I said so. Those are the ones that are no fun. Those are the ones that are miserable when people thrust change upon you. So we do it. Why? The only motivation we have is because, well, it'll be better for you, I guess, if I change. That's the best hope I can make. All these things are changes that we face. And all throughout them, and all the other changes that we go through, that we will face changes. Some of these, some others. The question is how we're going to respond to it. In the passage that we're reading today in Exodus, 2 things jumped out at me right away. And I wrestled with them all week long as I was out at Camp Commons. Was the fear of man or the fear of God? Fear of man or the fear of God? Change happens, we can't avoid it. Are we going to respond to it with understanding of who we are or understanding of who God is? Where's our focus going to be? Well, I know the one thing. One thing I do know beyond anything else, what we believe determines how we behave. I've said that here before, and I will say it again and again and again because I believe it's true. What we believe determines how we behave, good, bad, and otherwise. We can see our beliefs in our behaviors. we believe about God, what we believe about grace and redemption. What we believe about that is reflected in how we treat one another. It's the truth that's revealed in our reading today. We're in Exodus chapter 1. If you weren't here last week, you missed the very beginning of it. So we're in chapter 1 of Exodus. Just kind of give us a brief background here. A lot has happened in the first chapter of Exodus. Exodus chapter 1 spans 400 years. Okay, there's a lot that happens in that 400 years. I'm not sure exactly how much time has lapsed in those first 8 verses, but quite a bit of time has lapsed in those first 8 verses alone. And so we have verse 8. Then a new king who did not know about Joseph came to power in Egypt. We're like, oh, new king. That word then, after some time then, you might put in there. After a lot of time, many generations have passed, then a new king came about. Now, you probably know the story of Exodus. You maybe know the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors and all that kind of stuff. But kind of some of the background things that we're not really that aware of is Exodus, when Joseph went to Egypt, right, to save his family. When he went to Egypt, there was like a foreign king there. So Joseph went, and the king there at the time when Joseph arrived was not Egyptian. He was a Semitic kind of person, but he wasn't a local. He wasn't a local. So he received Joseph and said, "Hey Joseph, bring your whole family. You know, I'm not from here. You might as well bring everybody." That's how some of you rock always feel about all those new people, right? They just bring everybody. Yeah. That's what Joseph did. Oh, it's great here. Y'all come on. And it ruins everything for everybody, right? Well, kind of, but not really. Okay, so 400 years have passed. Joseph and everybody else is coming in. The ruling party changes. And now the locals are in charge again. Here in verse 8, then a new king. You can read that, then an Egyptian king. A local got in charge. And he didn't know about Joseph. Actually, he didn't even care about Joseph. He didn't like people that weren't from here. Make sense? You understand where he's at? That he didn't like people who weren't locals. He didn't think foreigners really belonged there. Well, if they belonged, then they just should help us. They shouldn't really be in. They can we'll take their money. We'll overprice our property and sell it to them. That's kind of, you follow me, right? That happens a lot in Rock Hall, right? We'll take their money, but we don't want them to. Okay, so you know where they're at. But see, not only did the Egyptians change over the 200, 300, 400 years, but the Israelites changed too. They came to Egypt, the land, they got told, hey, come to Egypt, you have the best land. And so they did. They moved into the valley, the Cush Valley, which was the valley of the Nile, which was the best land in all the world, they say, for agriculture. It's the best place to be, and that's where they moved, and they thrived there. Thrived so much that they kind of got lazy. Does anybody know why they came to Egypt to begin with? A what? A famine, yeah. How long does a famine last? Usually a few years, right? Not 400, for goodness sake. They way overstayed the famine. And I got to think about the other night. Why did they overstay the famine? Why did they stay 400 years? When the famine lasts a couple of years, maybe. They could have gone back, but they didn't because they liked it. Well, they were in the best place in all of Egypt. They were comfortable. No need to change. They were safe. They were loved. They were welcome. But just like in life, time changes everything. You can't avoid it. You cannot avoid change. It's nothing new. It was the same for Joseph and the Israelites. Same for us today. So the problem is, the issue for us is, how do we respond to the change that happens that we can't avoid? Time is going to bring about that we can't prevent. How do we respond to it? I think we can see two powerful principles here in the passage for us as we live in 2018. Starting at verse 9, I believe. Maybe. I'm going to read verse 9. Look, Pharaoh said to his people, the Israelites have become much too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous. And if war breaks out, we'll join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country. So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor. They built cities of Pithom and Ramses. as store cities, as you might think of them as warehouses, city warehouses. But the more they were oppressed, the Israelites, the more the Israelites were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread all throughout Egypt. The Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter with hard labor in brick and mortar and all kinds of work in the fields. And all their hard labor, the Egyptians used them ruthlessly. Now, Pharaoh is presented to us as a man intimidated by the Israelites. Intimidated by the Israelites. And what do intimidated leaders do? You've worked for them, right? What does an intimidated leader do? They press. They squeeze. Right? Well, some of you are that intimidated leader. Right? And what happens and I've been there too, when you feel intimidated as a leader, what do? You tense. You add pressure. Like you're not, all right, y'all come on. That's not a tense leader. An intimidated leader is guarded. Protection minded. That's exactly what Pharaoh did. He had a fear of man. Pharaoh was experiencing a fear of man. It was a fear of the Israelites. And so he put them to forced labor. He squeezed the situation. He was intimidated. He tried to intimidate them. The problem is, when Pharaoh operated out of a fear of man, he went into conflict with man. He went into conflict with man. He began to work the people against God's will. Okay? Fear of man results in us turning against God's will for our lives. When we live our lives out of a fear of man, we are living opposed to the will of God. Easily. Well, not always, but we fall into that trap very, very easily. And we know what happens when we work against God. Right? When you work against God, you lose every time because God always wins. You work against God, you're sure to lose. No doubt. But why is this fear of man such a temptation, such an easy thing for us to do? What is this? What am I talking about here? Well, a fear of man is about worrying about what others may think, say, or do to you, about you. I mean, that's simple. It's what others may think, say, or do about you. It's the fear of losing things of this world. Power, authority, status, comfort. Fear of man. It's the fear of the flesh. It's the fear of us. It's our natural, you might call them our human fears. Fear of man. Simply stated, the fear of man is insecurity. Insecurity. And we're all tempted to fall into the snare. Every one of us are tempted to fall into insecurities. Different times in life. Changes in our financial status. We worry about how people will perceive us if we can't afford those things that we used to afford. Or all of a sudden you can't afford those things that you never could before. How people are going to look at you differently. Changes in careers or employment status. I'm unemployed. I can't really tell anybody, or you're ashamed to tell anybody. Let people know that you're unemployed. Right? Because what they may think of you. Marital status. Yeah. Separated. So what are people going to say? I'm married. So what are my single friends are going to do? I mean, how are they going to treat you different? You're a man. You got a girlfriend. How's it going to be different? Our health. Like I can't do what I used to do. When you turn 18, how things are going to be great and people are going to look at you different. Then when you're 25 and you're no longer cool, like how things are going to be different. And God forbid when you turn 40, like it's all going to change. Right? And when you get 50, well, I don't know, I haven't been to 50 yet, but I know it's going to be fantastic. And some people would say, no, it's not so much. But we think about how others perceive us when we cross these milestones in life, right? When we graduate from high school, we go to college, people see us different. What are they going to think? Depends on what college I go to. When we get out of school, what job we take, our first job, how people perceive us then. All these things about how we think about what others think about us affects the way we live our lives, and we behave differently because we believe that their thoughts about us matter. even when we become a Christian, how outspoken we are about it or not. Because we worry about what others may think, say, or do about us. The problem is this fear of man often leads us to, just like for the Egyptians, is to get into conflicts with one another, even ourselves. We live in conflict. And that's not a good place to live. That's not where conflict belongs between men and women. Right? Scripture teaches in Ephesians 6 that our struggle is not against flesh and blood. Our struggle is against powers, spiritual powers, rulers, authorities, powers of this dark world. We are spiritual beings. We are spiritual beings. But we get so caught up in the physical parts of this world. Does this look right? We don't keep our focus on the spiritual realities, who we are in God's eyes. If we are to fear anything, we should fear God and what He thinks of us. I mean, that's where our number one fear should be, but that is usually the last thing we're concerned with. We should fear what the author of life thinks. Proverbs says that's the beginning of wisdom. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. What do I mean by fearing of God? At a previous church I was appointed to, we had this conversation that we, as a church, needed more fear of God in us. And people that came from different traditions of Christian faith, they were like, no, I ran from church. My church taught me that I was supposed to fear God. I don't want to fear God. I want to love God. I want to appreciate His grace. I was like, you're right. You're both right. But that's what we fear. Awe, wonder, marvel at the love, grace, power of God. That is awesome. That's what we fear. So when I say fear of God, that's what I'm talking about. It's a healthy respect, admiration, devotion to God. Okay? That's what we see in this passage where we're at today. Not a fear of man, but a healthy fear of God. That when we're facing change in horrible, unfortunate situations, uncomfortable situations even, that we maintain a healthy fear of God, a healthy understanding of who we are in Christ. That's what happened in our passage. A fear of God. We see it. Starting in verse 15. If you're following along in Exodus. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah. Now, pause. Sidebar for just a moment. Pharaoh. We hear all this talk about Pharaoh. We don't know his name. His name was not Pharaoh. He had a name. We just don't know what it is. But these two women, we know them for eternity. Their names actually were written in the Semitic records of the slaves of Egypt. Their names were recorded. His name? Pharaoh's name? It's not. How's that for God making sure who sticks around, right? In somebody's memory. God can take care of that. So the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, he told them, when you help the Hebrew women in childbirth and observe them on the delivery stool, if it's a boy, kill him. If it's a girl, let her live. The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt told them to do. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live? The midwives answered them, well, you see, Pharaoh, the Hebrew women, they're not like two Egyptian women. They are vigorous, and they give birth before we even get there. I mean, they like drop those babies and go back to work. They're amazing. They're like wild women. Well, they didn't say all that, but then you kind of get the point that they're not like you guys. They're different. So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. Paul's sidebar. You see that? When the fear of man, plans that are made from a fear of man standpoint are foiled by God. People grew. Fear of man motivated plans. God stood against them. The people became even more numerous. In verse 21, and because the midwives feared God, He gave them families of their very own. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people. Every boy that is born must be thrown into the Nile, not denial, but the Nile. But let every girl live. See, this working them to death was a slow process, right? Pressing them in labor was a slow process. So they were just going to keep making babies. So he had to stop the babies, stop the baby production. And the only way to do that was to begin to kill the babies. And he told us to begin to kill the boys who would grow up to be warriors, I suppose, is what he was thinking. And I'm sure that when Pharaoh asked the midwives to do this, he presented it like a carrot and a stick kind of thing. Kind of like, you do this with a carrot. You do this and I'm going to make you rich. You help me out with this and I'll make sure we take care of you. You're taken care of. But if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, it's not going to go well for you. So you know that they were like, so how do we tell Pharaoh this? Like, what are we going to do? We can't do what he's asking us to do. We're trained to foster life, to bring about life, to encourage life. And now he's asking us to take it? Like, how are we going to do that? They could fear man, for sure. And we would say, I don't blame you, I'm going to do the same thing, right? But that went against everything they believed. And what we believe determines how we behave. And it did for them as well. So I used to think of fearing God as like driving, like it happens to me when I come into Rock Hall quite often. Pull up right when I get to the church, like, listen, I'm starting to really accelerate really well. There's a deputy sheriff parking in the parking lot. Slow down. I used to think of the fear of God like as going by the state policeman. I got you. I see you. Right? I don't do that anymore. Now I tend to perceive the fear of God as though I'm riding through town and I'm just being me. Just riding through town and I look in the rearview mirror and there's one of my parents who taught me how to drive. And you go, whoop. You put both hands on the wheel, use the blinker, come to a complete stop. Not because I'm afraid, not because I think, all right, he's just going to run up here and jerk me out of this thing. No, not because I'm afraid. It's more like that. Because he told me how to drive. Like, I want to do it right. Like, I want to make him proud. Right? So as I'm driving along in life, I want to look back in that rearview mirror and see God and see him back here. Yeah, keep it back on the wheel. That's what I want to see. That's a healthy fear of God. A reverence, a respect, trust, and a love. The midwives they feared God. They believed God had a different way in mind than Pharaoh did. They couldn't do what he wanted them to do. It's the same for those who believe today. That's how Peter described it. He said in 1 Peter 1:14, he said, live as obedient children. Do not conform to the evil desires that you had when you lived in ignorance. Don't live the way you used to live, fear of man. But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do, for it is written, be holy because I am holy. Since you call on a Father who judges each man's work impartially, live your lives as strangers here in reverent fear. Reverent fear. Live our lives that way. What you believe determines how you behave. What you believe determines how you behave. Jesus one time was going out with his disciples and they were in a boat. There were a bunch of fishermen, but the story doesn't make sense to me. They were in a boat and they're going across the lake and all of a sudden the wind starts blowing and all these fishermen all panic like, oh no, we're going to drown! Oh, help us! Jesus, somebody wake Jesus up, he's sleeping! It seems like today, these days, when a bunch of fishermen go across the bay in the wintertime, they're the ones sleeping. And like me as the landlubber, I'm the one freaking out, getting sick. But no, not in this case. The fishermen were the ones panicking. Jesus was asleep. And they wanted to wake Jesus up. And what did he say when they woke him up finally? Why are you so afraid? Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? It's like, time changes everything. That's certain in this life. Our lives change, our homes, our relationships, everything. And trying to prevent change to come about in our lives is as useless as anything. I believe trying to prevent change is a sure sign. Is a sure sign of a fear of man. Trying to prevent change. I don't like change. Unless I'm the one doing it. Unless I'm changing, right? That's kind of we all are. We don't mind changing the channel on TV. As long as we're the one changing it. Somebody else comes in and changes it, we're like, hey! Right? We don't mind doing the changing. Change happens. We see this on TV oftentimes. We know those 60, 65-year-old actresses who are still making commercials and yet they look like they're 30. That reveals to me a fear of man. That they are hanging on to who they think everybody expects them to be. Way too long. See, we were created to age, to change. We were created that way. Not to deny it, to accept it. To accept the future unafraid. To lean into what God is trying to do. To allow our faith to see us through. Our churches, are going to face some changes in the coming days and months. Changes that we don't want. We may want. Some of you may want. Some of you may not want. It's not going to matter whether you want it or not. It's just going to be change. Right? Tomorrow. There's going to be some change tomorrow in your life. That you might want, some of it you won't want, but it's going to happen and you're just going to have to deal with it. Change happens. Can't prevent it. It's coming. How do we respond to it? See, history is filled with men and women who said no to a fear of man, yes to a fear of God, and they changed the world. But imagine if they had given in to the paralyzing effects of fear, the fear of man in their lives. Imagine the Apostle Paul fearing resistance or rejection and just staying at home and not going on all those missionary journeys where he planted churches all over the world. Imagine Martin Luther King giving speeches and still, instead of the way he did, but this time filled with like a gentle, mild, just discussion of the hints of evil in segregation. Because he didn't want to push too hard and offend people. Instead, King championed the civil rights movement against racial segregation in the United States because he feared God. Imagine Rosa Parks, right? Lady who was told to change seats. Imagine if she said, oh, okay, I guess, I don't upset anybody. Imagine Nelson Mandela looking the other way when he witnessed and experienced apartheid in South Africa because he didn't want to make a fuss. Instead, he feared God. Spent 27 years in prison. Imagine yourself fully aware of God's call on your life to be a part of His mission and vision, to advance His kingdom in Rock Hall and in the world, and yet you remain hostage to fears, to irrational worries, destructive fears of failure, harm, or rejection. Just ask you this. If you don't fulfill the mission that God has for you, who will? Who will? What you believe determines how you behave. I want to pray for us today that we might begin to believe God, we are who God says we are. And we're on the mission that God says we're on. And that we're to accomplish the things that God says we are designed to accomplish. That we can stand in the current, as Grace set me up for today. That we can stand in the current of culture, of Rock Hall, of aging lives. We can stand and face the future unafraid. Pray with me. Lord Jesus, we no longer want to live in fear of what others may do, say, or think. I want to live my life for you, no one else. I know that I've lived my life for myself for quite a while, but today we repent of that. Today we surrender our lives to be lived for you. We no longer worry about anyone else but you. You promised that when we give our lives to you, Lord, that you give us a new life. We thank you for this new life. We give it back to you today. Fill us, Lord, with your power, the power of your Holy Spirit, so that we might live out our faith in you every day, one day at a time. Use us for your glory.
I am yours and you are mine.
We continue in attitude of prayer as we lift up the events of our life and community and ask the Lord for your work. Pray that God, we love you. We thank you that you are at work in us in a moment. Lord, just as we have been overwhelmed with your power today as we worship, as we sung, as we prayed, as we read the scripture, aware of the we also want friends and loved ones to be aware of the presence. Lift them up to you right here and now. Situations, lives, here's what we say.